Okay. Next topic is the factors affecting the solubility. So, um, we have a total of 7 factors affecting solubility. The first one is the nature of the solute. Okay. Always remember the nature of the solute and the solvent. Always remember that like dissolves like. So if you have a solute that is polar in nature, it is most likely to be soluble in a polar solvent, while insoluble in a non-polar solvent. If your solute is ionic, so it is most likely to be soluble in a polar solvent and insoluble in a non-polar solvent. While non-polar solvents are most likely to be insoluble in polar solvent, while soluble in a non-polar solvent. So, say for example, you will be asked about how say for example you will be asked to choose between between these two na compounds. Say we have fluoroethane or fluoroethane, we have C2H5F, and then we have C2H5I, which is iodoethane naman. So ang best way to determine the polarity bond or the bond polarity is by getting the electronegativity difference. So you just look for the two atoms that are chemically combined. So we have carbon and fluorine here, and then carbon and iodine. So tagaanta mo og table, no, that has its electronegativity on that certain table. So you'll be using that table to determine the electronegativity. Remember that the bond polarity or the bond polarity or the electronegativity difference. If the difference is 0.4 to 1.7, it means that the bond is apolar. Okay, polar covalent bond. Kung 0 to 0.4 siya, that's nonpolar. Pag 1.7 and above siya, that is ion. so, carbon has 2.5 electronegativity difference. No, not electronegativity difference pa. Carbon has 2.5 electronegativity. Fluorine is 4.0. So that will be 4.0 minus 2.5. That is equals to 1.5. Correct? So that is the electronegativity difference of carbon and fluorine for this one. And for this one, we have iodine is equals to 2.4. So that will be 2.5 minus 2.4 equals to 0.1. So, tanawon na to, between these two, 1.5 is here, while 0.1 is here. Therefore, non-polar, ay polar ni siya, no? So, pangitaon ninyo, asa sa duha ang which of the two is more soluble in water? So, knowing water, it is a polar solvent. So, therefore, you will be, fluoroethane would be more soluble in water because of its electronegativity difference of 1.5, which tells us that fluoroethane is a polar molecule, a polar solute. Therefore, it is most likely to be soluble in polar solvent, which is our water. While this iodoethane would be less soluble, no, not insoluble in water because it is a non-polar. So that's how you're going to determine this is how you are going to determine the nature of the solute and the solvent. Always remember in terms of the nature of solute and solvent, always remember the term like dissolves like. Okay? So a polar solute always is dissolved or it is soluble in a polar solvent. Okay? So the next factor affects the solubility is temperature. So temperature. So for solid and liquid, kabalo naman gyud ta the temperature is really affects or it really affects the solid and liquid kasi for solid and liquid, the rate of solubility is high if the temperature is high. But that is not the same with gases. If the temperature is high for gases, what happens with gases is they move freely and they can escape the container. So therefore, kung gas sa katong ginasurihan din ni, um, it's not supposedly taas ang temperature for gases. It should be low. So for gases to have a high rate of solubility, they should have a low temperature for solubility to be high or para motsaka ang iyang solubility. While for gas and I no 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 sorry for solid and liquid, dapat high ang temperature for the solubility to increase. Okay? Para mosaka ang or mas paspas ang solubility niya. The next factor that affects solubility is pressure. So, however, sadly, pressure does not affect solid and liquid, only with gases. So, kung taas ang pressure sa gases, mas dali po sila maging soluble sa any solvent. Okay? So, these are the first three factors affecting the solubility. The next factors are what we call colligative properties. So, colligative properties, excuse me. So, for colligative properties of solution, these are another factor no affect solubility. However, for colligative properties, it does depend on the amount. So, it depends on the amount. It depends on the amount of the solution. So, that's colligative properties. So, we have four. The first one is the vapor pressure reduction. The vapor pressure reduction or depression, no? And then we have the boiling point elevation. We have the boiling point elevation. We have the freezing point depression. Ibig sabihin mo naog depression. And we have the osmotic pressure. Okay, so this four are the colligative properties. So I will be making a different videos for them um para di kayo mo mabore kay magtaas na. So the video ends here for the factors affecting solubility.